So for anyone that may want to start creating change, I think that step to starting is huge, because you may feel that you're underqualified to do it.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today, I'm very excited to have time with my friend, John Bryson. John has more than a decade of experience in operational roles at early-stage software companies, managing business development in various sectors, including advertising and marketing, supply chain, fintech, and banking. He's currently a senior member of the venture banking group at Banc of California, where he leads early-stage startup services from the bank's New York City office. In addition to working closely with investors and companies at the pre-seed and seed stage, John is building a partnership with Banc of California's internal product team to refine its digital transformation. Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful to be here.
Our pre-conversation was already titillating, so let's jump right in. I would love to hear, that's the short version of your bio, and everyone can check you out on LinkedIn, but I'd love to hear about your catalytic journey, right? Maybe sharing a few career highlights that you're proud of, or maybe where you failed, that help us see your catalytic nature.
Yeah, so the beginning, I'm going to date myself, and a lot of this stuff is not on my LinkedIn page, but I started in the entertainment space, quite literally in the mailroom. That was I was a part of the William Morris trainee program, and that's where you start.
Okay, I've never actually heard, like, that's a trope, but I've never heard anyone actually do it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I went through it. I mean, it was old school. Like I'm not sure what the program looks like today, but I came up through that system, very early on, and learned the value of hard work, learned the value of networking, learned the value of being on top of things, and doing what you say you're going to do. And I think those are all lessons that have kind of carried me through my career. And while I was there, you're always jockeying for position, trying to find the right place to kind of get a toehold within the organization, as well as maybe finding new business lines. I helped start their digital media group, which at the time was brand new. It didn't exist. And I think that was probably the first opportunity to be a catalyst for change. The way it came about was I was working on a desk that was in the commercials and endorsement space. And we were seeing opportunities for, again, this is really gonna date me, but ringtones. As mobile phones were becoming a new device for content, there were companies that wanted to license celebrities for content, or celebrity content for distribution. I thought, this is going to be this needs to be its own department at the end of the day, because the phone is going to turn into a media device that everyone is going to have. So I put together a white paper. In terms of like where we are as an organization, why this needs to happen, why we should be paying more attention to it. Because some of the deals that were coming across were actually quite lucrative. There was, at the time, Verizon wanted to come in and release a music artist's next single as content on the phone, and they were offering a 7-figure deal. So, the opportunities were there. At the time, the agency didn't understand it well enough, and no one wanted to do these deals because no one wanted to get locked into something that could potentially get them fired. So understandable. But the space was super interesting, and I felt like this is the future. So I put together a paper of like what are the opportunities here, basically a SWOT analysis, and started running it around to some of the senior leaders at William Morris, and which eventually led to starting the group. I was, very, very young. I was an assistant at the time, what the hell did I know about anything? But was able to be a part of starting this group. And that felt amazing. It felt like the right thing to do. It felt like, I was an entrepreneur kind of within this complicated and hierarchical system. And it was sort of like, in a way, it was definitely creating change. And it was monetizing our talent roster in a way that people hadn't thought about. Like, I was able to get one of the first deals I did was for a comedy writer. And it was someone who wanted someone to write lines for, how they had celebrity voiceover doing directions. So like, you had these direction devices that you could type in the address, and you could have like Mr. T tell you how to get home or something like that. One of those companies wanted a comedy writer to write the lines for Mr. T. And so that was one of the first deals that I brokered. It was like a nothing deal, but I was like, this actually is so interesting. And anyway, that was probably the first digital deal that William Morris got to do, which I probably don't get credit for, but it really was the first deal.
Oh
But
my
anyway,
gosh.
through that,
So
like,
many questions. Yeah, keep going.
and I was like, if I'm going to get ahead, like everything at that time, it was the early 2000s, everything at that time was changing. Like you had, music was being decimated by online distribution. Film and TV were next. The mobile phone was becoming obviously a bigger part of people's lives. I was like, well, the world is moving pretty quick in terms of the technology side. So I was like, this is probably where things are going. The old Wayne Gretzky quote, you skate to where the puck is going, not where it is. So I left to kind of learn sort of like the more like the digital content space. And how was content being monetized? When you're doing behavioral targeting, using online data to individuals, like what did that really mean? Because like, that was going to disrupt like the Nielsen system in terms of ratings and everything else. All of a sudden you have digital capability of tracking people and being able to deliver them content based off of their likes and dislikes and everything else. That's super interesting. This is obviously like where the world is going. Who knows the most about this space? And, for better or worse, like the online ad tech space seemed to have like a better handle on it than someone at, going to NBC or wherever. So I was like, I have to learn this. Like, this is where it's going. So I found a job as a sales guy, selling ad tech. And it was like one of the first ad tech platforms, and then was in that world for a few years, and until that kind of got busted up for different reasons, mainly because the advertisers are like, we don't want third parties biting into our margins. And then, that kind of ended it. From there, I went to a fintech company called FastPay that was doing receivables financing for companies in the media space. I'd never done anything in finance, so it was all new to me. Learning about loans and lines of credit and doing your diligence on companies and making sure that they were going to be credit worthy, et cetera. That was all new skill sets. Working with a team that had more of a finance background and all that type of stuff. That was sort of my first foray into something that had anything to do with finance. And then I ran sort of business development for the East Coast for them, and built up a good amount of business. And then was kind of looking for something that would give me a broader platform to reach the, call it, bigger technology space, just because I was only focused on digital media. What else is out there, and started talking to banks. I didn't have a traditional banking background, obviously. I didn't come up through any of their programs, but I knew the ecosystem in New York, the tech ecosystem, pretty well, and could help on the business development side, and was able to sell myself into a bank that was starting a tech group, for the most part, and was there for a number of years until that bank sold off, and then found my way to PacWest, which eventually became Banc of California, and I've been here ever since. All with the approach of, I think with the through line with everyone has always been to really kind of find the value outside of just banking. I think banking can be a very commoditized product depending on what it is that you're doing and what you're offering. It's very relationship based, very, it's figuring out how can I be of good service to my clientele, where they want to work with me and I want to work with them and be helpful, etc. So in that sense, I've kind of kept the catalyst spark alive in terms of thinking through, how can I drive more value for the clients that I want to work with? And that's, I'm very, very, very lucky to be in a place where they allow me to stretch my wings and kind of build on that idea.
Listening to your story, I'm going to posit that it's not luck, because you have moved with intentionality in a way, not in a traditional way that, when we're taught like, hey, figure out your 20-year career path. Like that isn't you, but you. It sounds like you've had a lot of intentionality. So I'm not surprised that you're at a place where you're like, I get to do this next thing that I love to do. I'm going to let you choose your own adventure, John, because you had so many super interesting ideas. There's too many for us to have a conversation about today, so maybe we'll have to have another conversation. But I want to pull out some of the things that I think are super interesting. I'll just give the highlights and then you get to pick and we can double click. You started off by talking about hard work, which is super interesting because while catalysts deliver results and we're known as the get stuff done people, we actually haven't had a conversation about how you have to deliver and the hard work that comes from, that we need to put into to be successful catalysts. So that's one. Then you talked about, look, I saw this opportunity in this company, and it was a total white space opportunity where no one really even understood it. So I put together the white paper with the numbers, had to find someone who sponsored it. This is super timely too. I mean, it's something that catalysts are always up against. I was having this conversation today about how people right now are being catalysts. A lot of them are being charged with help us develop our AI strategy, but help us figure out how much cost/efficiency, cost savings we're going to get. And the numbers are those aren't easy numbers to come up with. We're often on the forefront of something where the TAM or our ability to capture that is fuzzy at best. So that's two. Number three is you went from industry to industry to industry with intentionality. You're like, oh, once I saw this white space, I learned digital. Then I wanted to understand the behavior behind the digital. I'm wondering about how you navigated that and if imposter syndrome came up. Then you talked about sort of connected to that, the intentional hypotheses, this is the next thing I want to test as I move to a next job. And then the final one is also just super interesting. You've had this big career in tech, and as you land in these amazing places, you're actually, it's all about the people. So there you go. Which one do you want to unpack first?
Well, I think the imposter syndrome is an important thing to tackle. So for anyone that may want to start creating change, I think that step to starting is huge, because you may feel that you're underqualified to do it. And I would say that when I did it at William Morris, I certainly was underqualified. I didn't have a business background. I was a philosophy major. What did I know about?
Yeah, I didn't even get to process that.
There was no structure. I hadn't even taken an accounting class or even a business class. I think I had an international negotiations class, and that was it. But so the idea of putting together a plan for this hierarchical organization, that was intimidating. But the opportunity really drove me to try it. And that was a big step for me personally. And then I'd say like the switch to digital media, there was imposter syndrome as well. What did I know about technology? What did I know about understanding how data was collected? What is data? Data on a first party level, second party, third, what is that? Who are these third party data providers, and how are they making so much money selling this ether, to different companies? That one I overcame by memorizing the sales pitch that the CEO had typed out as sort of like as an outline, essentially.
That's
For the deck. I
amazing.
literally wrote down 3x5 cards, memorized it word by word, and would use that because I didn't understand it in terms of like the technology and how it worked, everything else. And then the rest of it I kind of filled in as I learned more and was asking a ton of questions. They assigned someone to me so I could ask questions, and they were very good and patient. So that helped as well. But I think that just getting started, it's so daunting, right? And then the pivot is like, that's also daunting, trying these new industries without any experience at all. I think those are things that are, most people probably would look at and go, no way.
So do you have advice for catalysts who are like, oh, I mean, like, functional switches or industry switches for how to navigate?
It kind of comes down to that old adage that most people don't have enough confidence in themselves. And you really do have to kind of go for it. And I think I definitely didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, at that time. And, having to figure it out. Yeah, it was a lot of tough years.
Yeah.
A lot of tough years. But it's possible I think having a reason, the why was very strong. With digital media, I really wanted to understand where the puck was going and how real it was. Because the claims that a lot of these ad tech companies were making in terms of being able to deliver very specific types of content were pretty bold. And I was like, well, how much of this is gray is what I wanted to understand. And so I went into that as far as I could go or wanted to go. And I think with the move to banking, it's similar. It's like, finance, it's funny to me, it's like, this is how the world works. At the end of the day, it's gas for the car. The idea of money, it's not, groceries and stuff. It's sort of like, this is literally fuel for the business. And it's a tool at the end of the day. And you have to be able to manage that tool properly. And so it's that to me is interesting. And I wanted to understand that pipeline better. So that keeps me kind of interested in doing what I'm doing. Because ultimately, we're here to help with growth and getting businesses from point A to point B.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You connected the imposter syndrome to the hard work thing and the hypothesis piece, right? Like your why was, I want to test this hypothesis. Like, what is this new digital tech stuff going to do? And how does that connect to some bigger whys? And also what I hear is like memorizing the card, right? Like when I switched from art history to becoming a network engineer, I worked like 80 hours a week because I didn't know anything about network engineering. I was like, I'm going to grad school. Like I have all these people who are going to like help me learn that. And it's the rabbit hole to go down. So we've got to hear a little bit about, in the themes about how you relate to the concept of being a catalyst, but I'd love to have you unpack that and tell us maybe a little bit about how being a catalyst has supported you to get to this executive part of your life.
I mean, obviously, it's not a direct line or connection from the things that I've done in the past to where I am now. I think having that open-mindedness has helped so
Mhm.
much,
Mhm.
and a drive to try to find some level of success and to
Mhm.
be great. I think those are all things that drive me, that are intangible. Um, you can't teach ambition. Uh, you know, so that why, and finding the why and using that as sort of like the guiding light, has sort of been um, a lot of what drives me.
Yeah, it's the fire in the belly of the catalyst, this like untapped energy that,
Yeah,
yeah.
I could be doing, could I go and do something else? Sure. Like, as long as it's not neurosurgery, I'd probably be okay with it.
So as a catalyst, and maybe we've talked about a couple of these things, but what can you share one or two of the biggest challenges you faced as a catalyst executive specifically, and maybe what helped you most overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, I guess, I think for a while it was hearing the word no.
Mm,
Um, and so many talks and so many podcasts, you hear people say how they flipped the script in terms of being motivated by the no. So it's like, it's like there was an agent that once told this story about how, he was constantly getting no's. He's like, I changed my perception of what those no's were, because eventually I would sell something. And so then he would sell something, for an ungodly number of amount of money. And then he said, I would split that amongst all the no's, and saying like, I would be being paid for the no's, that
mm,
would get me to the yes. And
mhm.
I think like that's a way to look at it. I think it's very easy to find yourself on an island, which I think I can never, I've never started my own company, but I think a lot of founders face this. You are on an island wondering, is this really going to work? Am I doing the right thing?
Mhm.
I've got responsibilities. Um, how do I continue? And the conviction piece of it, I guess,
So
is
how do you
something.
overcome that part?
Um, heads down, and I think the number one way that I've overcome it is by talking to other people and sharing ideas. I think you can give away a lot of ideas, and I think that's another problem. I think people hold on to their ideas thinking that they're proprietary, and what's proprietary is the execution.
100%.
Ideas I've learned that ideas are not as valuable as we like to think that they are. And I think when you share those ideas and you're able to bounce them off people, and you are looking at them in the eye in person, you can read if it's a legit idea or not. Or at least I can. Maybe not everybody can do that. But for me, this is what has worked, is like I can read someone's body language and how they respond to an idea. Um, and then that helps tell me if I'm on the right track or not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I get validation.
Nice. Yeah, the loneliness piece is big, especially the more senior you get, I think, because if a lot of times if you're successful, other people and senior leaders in the organization feel risk, like you're going to be cutting into their whatever. And so, you and I met through the Catalyst Leadership Trust, which is why we created that, because it's like it can be super lonely. Like, where's the safe place where you can do that validation with people who think at your level, who think at your speed, and all of that. Um, the what else did I want to say? Oh yeah, the reframing though, going back to the challenges, the reframing failure that you were talking about is really powerful. And it's like, I wonder if you have advice for like maybe more junior catalysts who are listening about how to metabolize the no's, because especially when you're early in career and you don't have enough wins. Like I remember I did a door-to-door sales job. It was for a nonprofit getting memberships, but it's like the number of no's that you get, like it was such a great experience because you have to learn to not take it personally. And then you get the joy from the win, but like that's hard. Do you
It's
have advice
hard.
for?
It's
Yeah.
hard, but you know what? Eventually, maybe you get to a yes. And when you do get to that yes, that's the most important yes ever, because then you can ask, why did you say yes?
Yeah,
Then maybe you can reverse engineer it and change your ways to get to another yes. Or like you, at the end of the day, what you end up learning is like, well, what is it that people want? Why am I trying to push string with an idea or a concept or a product that, doesn't seem to be working in market? Well, what would work in market? And so I think no matter what it is that you're selling, you need to stop at some point and kind of ask that question with the people that you're trying to sell to.
totally. Totally. The strategic pause, like, hold on a minute. Let's
Yeah,
reflect here. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I,
One of the things that you mentioned when we were talking before we hit record was the place that you are at now sounds like it's conducive to being a Catalyst executive and showing up the way that you show up. And so I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit about how that's been supportive for you.
yeah. I think that that's also probably one of the biggest challenges for people that want to create change is being a part of an organization or something that is open to the idea. Trying to convince some elder statesmen of the idea of change, and especially change being in technology, it's an uphill battle. And so there's a great man, there was an artist slash celebrity manager, his name was Bernie Brillstein, who came in and talked to the trainees. And he's like, look, guys, if it's not moving fast enough for you, get out. Don't stay married to this place. It's not going to do you any favors. And he was absolutely right. I think when you're young, you kind of like lend yourself to giving all this loyalty to the organization that took a chance on hiring you. But, quite frankly, if that organization, I don't know if the newer generation has this idea, but like, if that organization's not doing it for you, then, there's plenty of other places to go. And I think that was a discovery that helped me a lot, because it was very hard to let go of this place, William Morris, which was like the hub of Hollywood. It was, it's not the same thing, but like, similar to like a Goldman Sachs in New York, William Morris
Right.
is to Los Angeles. It's the place. And so like to leave that and go anywhere else seemed like a demotion. That's what my brain at the time was thinking. It was hard. But I also knew that in order to get ahead of the problem, I had to leave.
It's so hard, and it's something we talk with Catalyst all the time. And it is an interesting question about the generational difference. But what I will say is my experience of Catalyst and just the way we show up is like, I can change it. I can see the better way. So it'd be an interesting research actually with maybe Marty to look at different generations and their relationship, Catalyst, non-Catalyst, and their loyalty. Because I think that we get to your point, like we identified, like I can fix it. I need to fix it, as opposed to like, they don't want what I have. Like I want to go to a place where they want what I have and they'll support me.
Yeah, I
Talking
think
about, yeah,
one of the mistakes that I made was I didn't approach the top guy early enough. And the other side of it was the top guy at the time was not approachable. And
that's a good point, actually.
yeah,
Totally.
what I have now is I have people at the very top who are completely approachable. And when they say open door, they absolutely mean it. Absolutely mean it. And that is everything.
It is everything. And thank you for the grace that you just gave me, because like I have a motto about living life without regret, which is not possible. So then regret the things that you did do versus the things you didn't do. But so one of my regrets was that in one of my roles, it didn't go to the top. Like we had all of the success metrics, like we had all the things, and I've held myself like, why didn't I just go in and say, do you want me to 10x this with this resource? I could. But to your point, I love also the reflection of like, it wasn't invited. Like it was clear that wasn't necessarily going to be a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't
All
going
right.
to an
So,
assistant.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What was that last one?
No, it was the William Morris stuff. Like they weren't going to listen to it at that time. Now
Right.
it may be different, but like when I was there.
All right. As we wrap up, who is your favorite, most inspirational catalyst and why?
you know, I thought a lot about this. I am going to attribute it to a music artist. I'll call out Prince.
Nice.
Um, in terms of, you look at what he did from the very beginning in terms of how he thought of managing his own career, and he knew who he was and what he could do. And, it was very much give me the ball and get out of my way. Which was I think I certainly admire. And I think, where he took his music was in a direction that at the time was so just different. I mean, it was as if he was planted on Earth from somewhere else. He wasn't born from Earth. He was somewhere, another planet. And like, I think there's a lot of music artists that have that type of connectivity that you hear them and you're like, how did they do that? Where did that come from? These concepts, the ideas, the melodies, whatever it may be, the lyrics. These are very bold things that they're putting forth. And, it's different than the business world for sure, because you're talking about human emotion. But I look at music artists as probably being some of the bravest people just because of what they're putting out there. It's very hard, Can't imagine being Chappell Roan in, Washington Square Park with just a keyboard and like, people throwing wadded up paper out or whatever, like yelling things, or, eventually becoming something it took her a while.
Yeah.
You know, that Lady Gaga, same type of thing, I think she didn't have it easy, but she had conviction for sure. She knew what she wanted to do. And I think like that type of confidence, because like, these musicians, like they're not doing it for like at that level, you're not doing it you can barely get by.
Totally.
All struggle, and they're struggling. It's pure struggle. There's no IPO.
That's
You know,
right.
they're just hoping to get to a place where they can make some sort of living and have health insurance, right? So, that's a very different motivation than what we see today in most of the world. Everyone's going after these material things. I think, that's not really what they're going after. So anyway, I look at that world as being sort of like some of the best catalysts.
I love it. I don't know if you've seen, there's a great documentary about the Beastie Boys.
I haven't seen it yet.
And
They're incredible.
they talk about how after the first, at the first album, I think it was just the first album, and they basically had used up all their money, and they had tried their promoter an agent had tried to make them into something that they weren't. And when they really hit it big was when they were like, fuck it, we're going to make the music that we want to make, that we enjoy, that serves who we are as people. So just pulling that thread, like the more you can tap into, who you are. You said about Prince, like he knew who he was and he stayed true to that. And I think for Catalyst, that's such a great message, because we often try and contort ourselves into fitting into systems where we just don't fit into. So thank you for sharing.
I would say that's one of my strengths and weaknesses, right? Is being able to adapt. In the chameleon-like type of personality that can mold into these different things. The problem with that is like, you can trick yourself into doing things that maybe you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Like I look back in my career and I probably spent more time than I should have in the ad tech space doing what I was doing. That definitely did. They were not easy years, and it was not fun. At a certain point, it just was not. It really wasn't fun, and I should have moved on earlier. So it's you have to know where your light is, and then stay on track with that, and not deviate because of like what your concerns of like what other people are thinking about.
That's an amazing place to end. Thank you so much.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Shannon.
It's always a good conversation. And to our listening audience, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, make sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com. And if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Of course, if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.